Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Career Choice Series webinar on international law. The Career Choice Series is designed to help you choose your career path. Whether you're a law student, young lawyer, or transitioning attorney, find out what it's like to work in various practice areas and the best way to position yourself to get there. The Career Choice Series is brought to you today by ABA Legal Career Central, Law Student Division, Young Lawyers Division, and the section of International Law. The ABA section of International Law is the leader in the development of policy in the international arena, the promotion of the rule of law, and the education of international law practitioners. The section focuses on a full range of international legal issues and is involved in a wide variety of substantive legal activities. The Young Lawyers Division is here to help new lawyers navigate the early years of their career and law students prepare for life after law school. The Law Student Division offers premium benefits, which includes a savings of $250 on Barbary Bar Review, $25 off West academic casebooks, and a legal ethics bundle that includes a free Model Rules of Professional Conduct ebook. Upgrade to premium for $25. Sign up today at abaforlawstudents.com/go premium. ABA Legal Career Central is a career center that offers both career development resources and a job board for law students, lawyers, and other legal professionals across all disciplines and career stages. Today's moderator is Skip Horn. Skip has a long and distinguished career in university administration with an emphasis in legal education. He currently serves as the Senior Assistant Dean for External Relations at Santa Clara Law. Previously, he was a global recruiting manager for Latham Watkins, president of NELP, and president of the National LGBT Bar Foundation. He is a board member of ABA Legal Career Central. Skip, thanks so much for being here. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Emily. So we're thrilled today to have two attorneys with us whose careers absolutely embody what it means to practice in the international law space. Ganan Almond is a partner and vice president at the Wicks Group in Washington, D.C., where he focuses his practice on U.S. regulation and policy, international law, and government relations, involving aviation, aerospace, and national security matters. Ronce received his J.D. from Duke-Geneva School of Law, his M.A. from Duke University, and his B.A. from George Washington University. Renee is an attorney in Washington, D.C., where she focuses her practice on technology, energy and environmental law, and international law. Renee received her J.D. from Georgetown University Law Center, her M.S. from Michigan State University, and her B.S. from UCLA. Both Ronce and Renee have written extensively in their fields. They've served on dozens of committees and boards and worked with many international programs and organizations, including the United Nations. So thank you both for speaking with us today. Over the years, I've advised a lot of law students on careers, and whenever they mention international law as an area of interest, they sometimes envision a life of jetting around the world, exploring exotic locales, and sipping coffee in sidewalk cafes. Ronce, you're almost doing that as we speak, since you're joining us from Geneva, Switzerland. So why don't you get us started and tell us a bit more about your international law practice?
Absolutely, and thank you, Skip, and the ABA for hosting this event and the participants for participating. Yes, as you noted, my practice is involved regarding international law, deals with aerospace and aviation and transportation-related issues. And I'm here in Geneva this week, where I serve on a committee of experts that are working on harmonized rules for the transportation of dangerous goods. And it's an angle in international law that I didn't necessarily foresee when I was a law student years ago. But it just reminds you that the practice of international law is varied, and especially in our global world and globalized economy that we live in, there's many pathways to get here. But that also creates a challenge because there is no set pathway that you might easily find. So it's kind of have to choose your own adventure and be persistent about it. But I know Renee will give you a little bit more of an overview on what international law is for those that are not familiar with international law.
Great. And so if law students aren't jetting around the world, they often think that the place in the United States to practice or pursue a career path in international law is, of course, our nation's capital. So Renee, you're with us today from Washington, D.C. We'd love to hear more about your work and the practice of international law. Renee?
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Mute. First, thank you for inviting me to participate in today's career series, and to everyone who has joined us. As Ronce was just saying, international law is incredibly diverse and evolving, particularly with globalization and the impacts of technology. And the good news for you is exciting career choices in international law will only continue to grow and expand. You'll find lawyers working for law firms, as in-house counsel for governments, businesses, nonprofits. You'll find lawyers in NGOs and international institutions such as the United Nations, the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, regional development banks, and a range of international courts, tribunals, and arbitration bodies, just to name a few of the places. And keep in mind also that lawyers also frequently work outside the legal departments in those entities, using their legal skills and knowledge as part of their daily job. Also, there are many career options in transnational law, where you need to know and be able to work with differing legal, regulatory, governance, and judicial systems in foreign countries. You know, the section of international law has more than 50 committees covering major areas of international law, just to give you an idea of the diversity within this area.
So Renee, when you went off to undergraduate school at UCLA, did you have dreams of being an international lawyer?
Indeed, I did. Law for me was a second career. I was working in this tech sector when I decided to go to law school. And while in law school, I worked for the U.S. government in promoting rule of law, which pragmatically meant that I was assisting judges, attorneys, law enforcement, and other practitioners around the world who were facing novel and complex questions about the law, usually in challenging situations involving conflict and post-conflict situations. When I graduated, I landed a great dream job in the Legal and Government Affairs divisions at World Wildlife Fund, working on environmental issues related to oil and gas, the oceans, endangered marine mammals, the impacts of climate change in the Arctic. I then became a senior executive at a global scientific society where I worked with some of the world's greatest technology professionals on how to help inform and educate policy leaders worldwide so that we can have better public policy, legislative, regulatory decisions in this transformative digital age. I'm now in private practice where I continue to work on those issues. Part of the issues that I work on right now is artificial intelligence, data science and analytics, and other really cool technologies and innovations.
Great. And Ronce, you mentioned career path in your opening remarks. So what was your, how did you break into this field of international law?
Well, it's a great question, and coincidentally, I guess my career in international law actually began here in Geneva when I was a law student. I did a program. I attended Duke University, and there was a Duke-Geneva Institute for Transnational Law. And I studied after my first year here in Geneva, and I had some really good professors, really interesting people. One of the courses I took was international criminal law, and one of my professors was Justice Goldstone, who was the first prosecutor for the International Criminal Tribunal in Yugoslavia. And the other professor and teaching the course was Stephen Kay, who happened to be the defense attorney that represented the first person prosecuted by the NCTY, Justice Tadic. So it's interesting to hear from both the prosecution and the defense in the International Criminal Tribunal class, and it really got me interested in wow, this is a possibility. In other words, the idea of international law was possible. And that coursework in international criminal law led me to get involved in the special court for Sierra Leone, where I worked with the prosecutor's office, led by David Crane, who's now at Syracuse Law. But we were working on, I was working on research memorandum on issues of jurisdiction and so forth. But the goal was to go after Fode Sanko, a warlord in Sierra Leone, and then eventually for Charles Taylor, who was intervening from Liberia. But one of the things that working on the tribunal, I got to know how international institutions work, and I became increasingly interested in how international organizations work. And coincidentally, when I applied for my first legal job, one of the clients for the law firm was being investigated by the United Nations. And when they were interviewing me, my background in knowing about international organizations, helped me get the job. So it really started out in law school for me, although I've always had an interest in international travel and organizations and politics. But it was seeing the practice of international law and realizing that it was a potential career path was the first step for me.
So in terms of a typical day in the life of an attorney practicing in the international law space, so Ronce, what is that, if there is a typical day, what does it look like for you? And if you'd like to, you mentioned you're in Switzerland right now for work, so maybe you can use what you're doing there to let us know what your day looks like.
Yeah, so actually, that's a great picture there. I think the Security Council there in the United Nations. But I've been here this week at the United Nations. So my daily kind of work, I go through the gates and go to the old League of Nations building. It's beautiful. And you go in, you kind of soak in the history of it. But actually, in some ways, it's kind of mundane. So we have delegations from all over the world. What they call the competent authorities, the government agencies regulating dangerous goods, and so we have model regulations that are implemented worldwide, and various delegations and NGOs, I'm here representing an NGO, are submitting proposals to amend the rules or clarifications, and so each delegation will submit the proposal, we'll discuss it, there'll be a vote. And then this goes on each day, and it's one way it's kind of tedious, but it's also very interesting. But the whole point is to ensure that we have a harmonized set of rules that can help underline and fuel the global economy. But it's the other big part, of course, is after work you get to meet the delegates and really meet fascinating people from all around the world that are really care deeply about international legal issues.
So Renee, I'm guessing your day may look a little different than Ronce's. So what does a typical day for you and your practice look like? You mentioned some of the cool areas you get to work on.
Yes, my daily life has nowhere near the adventure of Ronce and his global jet-setting lifestyle. My day is more like your typical office day. No 2 days are the same, but the commonalities that I have, there's a lot of writing. There's meetings, there's working with others around the world. I generally participate in my meetings online with colleagues from multiple countries. So it's a typical office setting.
So what do you love about what you do, Renee?
I love this question. I spend my time working with a broad range of stakeholders on how we can collaborate to solve challenges and to advance international and domestic law. In short, how do we make the world a better place? I get to interact and work with people at the United Nations, the World Bank, international organizations, companies, and nonprofits. I mean, what is there not to love in being able to use my legal skills and knowledge in such a meaningful way? The three things I love, and I mean that in all caps, about a career in international law is the legal work may not be easy, but it's worthwhile. Whether you're working in government, a company, a nonprofit, an international institution, the work matters, and it's worthwhile to pursue. I love the evolving nature of the field and the diversity of the people I get to work with.
And anything you don't like?
Oh, that's a hard one. I'm hard-pressed to think of what I'd hate. One practical aspect to consider about transnational work across time zones particularly is the need to sometimes join meetings in the middle of the night or at 4 a.m., and then you are not going back to sleep.
So speaking of time zones, Ronce, I assume you're also in this, as Renee said, to make the world a better place. So what do you love about what you do?
Well, I echo Renee's comments that I think one of the great things about practicing international law is that you feel that you are doing something rewarding and that you're progressing the world politics, world issues that are facing humanity on a global scale, incrementally, even if it's just a technical issue that you're working on behalf of the client. It's very rewarding work in that way. I mean, of course, this is a love-hate thing I have. I travel a lot, so I both love to travel and I hate to travel. I mean, another airplane, another hotel are not exactly appealing to me. But I try to mitigate that by whenever I'm in a different country, different place, to go out and explore the local setting, the history, and try to get to know the place I'm working in. And one thing, when it gets to challenges, and it's something I do a lot. Part of my work is development work, so I'm working with agencies of government, foreign government authorities in the field, helping them implement these global rules involving international aviation, for example. And it's challenging because the work is slow, and there's political institutional challenges that you have to overcome in each country, and you have to be attuned to that, and you need to have some flexibility and some patience and some understanding, recognizing that incremental steps are actually the best way to get to the long-term goals, and keep focused that way.
So Ronce, as a practical matter, what are some of the top skills that you would recommend that someone looking to practice in this area be honing? And especially it relates to a question we just received from a law student. If there is anything in particular a law student should be doing in terms of externships, journals, clinics, student organizations that can help prepare them for a career in international law.
Okay, yeah, I'll tackle the question first and then get back to the idea of skills. Yeah, well, first of all, I think getting involved in externships and taking coursework that gets you a foothold in international law, legal practice in the legal field is very useful. Having a background on what is international law and the workings of it, just the fundamentals of it, are very important. And so you can, obviously, externships and programs that involve international law will put you in touch with other international legal practitioners that can be mentors and people that can help you throughout your career. But I want to stress that being an international lawyer, being a good international lawyer means being a good lawyer. So you need to have good research and writing skills. You need to concentrate on developing that. You need to have a good, diligent work ethic. I think it's very important for young attorneys to be able to take on a project that's been assigned to them and see it through, and really get into the details. Don't chase down the paths and figure out the answer to the problem. And then, of course, have flexibility and teamwork and skills. So you can work well with others and communicate well. It's really important as an attorney to be able to communicate both with your colleagues and the client, and that also means just listening well, especially when you're speaking to your clients.
So Renee, what skills would you recommend, especially any ideas for folks in law school, what things they could be doing to prepare themselves?
Ronce just provided great advice and guidance, and I wholly support everything that Ronce just said. I would add, stay on top of legal developments over the course of your career, because law is continuing to evolve and develop. It's part of staying competitive in the marketplace. I would also recommend some non-legal areas. If you want to be competitive, accounting and technology are two areas that are relevant to almost every single legal job out there. So having some background in that. Externships, there's lots of externships, including a bake your own. If there's an area of law that you want to go into, look at what is it that you want to get out of it. And writing, as editor-in-chief of International Law News, of the section of International Law, we're always looking for feature articles and other submissions that are covering timely and contemporary topics of international law, and it's a great way to get exposure with the legal community in that area of law that you want to go into.
So Renee, I imagine as you got into this, there were a lot of things you learned and maybe even a few surprises along the way about as you built your career path. What do you think people would be surprised to know about the practice area called international law?
Let me start by explaining why international law is your future and everyone's future as a lawyer. Globalization, technology, our interlinked economies means that we'll only see further reinforcement between domestic law, cross-border, and international law. And so the question is not whether you as a legal professional will need to work in foreign or international law during your career. The question is to what extent. And I think that will come as a surprise to folks when they get later in their career and they're encountering foreign and international law. Career opportunities, I said this before, will only continue to expand. Those who know foreign law, transnational practice, areas of international law will be very competitive in the long term. And third, you can have a dynamic career. It's one that could be filled with challenge and satisfaction without necessarily the frequent flyer miles even. The challenge will be how to choose among the many exciting options. From corporate law to finance to import-export, there's health law, biotech, environment, human rights, immigration, anti-corruption, anti-money laundering. And the list just goes on. So it's really been trying to identify where do you want to focus your energy.
So Ronce, besides also accumulating lots of frequent flyer miles, what else has surprised you about your career so far?
Yeah, I mean, one of the surprising elements that when I started my practice is I concentrated for the most part on international aviation law, and there's a series of treaties that govern how our markets are connected, how countries do they have reciprocal trading rights regarding aviation, et cetera. And delving into that area of public international law relating to aviation, I became interested in maritime issues, and so I started looking into the law of the sea and seeing the connections between the law of the sea and aviation. And I became interested, for example, in the South China Sea dispute. I write for a publication called The Diplomat, where I started covering some of the issues arising from the South China Sea, and really requiring myself to look into starting with an aviation perspective, but then looking at from a maritime perspective about how these laws applied. And of course, we had the Permanent Court of Arbitration, the tribunal ruling there last year in regards to that arbitration case, and I provided some commentary on that. And that led me, actually, interestingly enough, the law of the sea led me to space law. And so I've been looking more recently at space law issues. I've submitted a paper, and this gets back to Renee's point, is always writing and researching and staying abreast of issues will help you in your career. And I started looking at space issues. I wrote a paper and presented down in Australia in September at the International Astronautical Congress, the annual meeting of the space law community and the space community in general. And I subsequently published it in the Yale Journal of International Law, and then somehow I got a call from the National Space Council at the White House, and they wanted to talk to me about my paper. And I'm not even a space lawyer. So I just showed you how these ideas of international law are connected, and international law allows you the opportunity to kind of bridge these fields. And if you're willing to take the time and effort to explore them, you don't know where it's interesting places you might lead you. So I just say that it's so surprising to me that the way that these fields are connected in that way.
Well, we've got some good questions in the queue, but before we get to that, I wanted to see if both Ronce, you and Renee could also just very briefly tell us how your involvement in the ABA has helped in your career. Ronce, why don't you go first?
The ABA has been instrumental in helping my career. I'm an editor at the Air and Space Lawyer, so I'm helping me work on my own writing and researching skills. It's been very helpful. The networking has been very useful as well. I mean, the ABA, of course, you're in touch with other lawyers in your field, and that can lead to client referrals, for example. So if someone knows that you're in aviation, I have to do aviation law, and they say, well, I got this matter that's coming from my client. We don't necessarily do that. Would you come help us on this project? So there's a practical kind of networking, both as a mentoring aspect, but also as just a very practical, getting more clients, which is what you want to do as an attorney, of course.
And Renee, how about you?
Equally, the ABA has been instrumental in my career. You know, if you aren't already a member and you're on this call, join the ABA today and become active. I'm active in the section of international law, where you can join any committee for free and benefit from the programming, the networking, and this broader community of legal professionals. You know, my top three, it keeps me on the forefront of cutting-edge legal topics, it provides valuable networking opportunities, and it provides leadership opportunities. But at the end of the day, it's more than career growth. The ABA is a community where you build your career, your network, and you make lifelong friends with lawyers and other legal professionals who similarly care about applying their legal background to advance justice, development, and the rule of law around the world. So again, if you're not already a member, join today and get involved.
Well, thank you both. We have a number of questions related to how do you break into this field and how do you start your career in international law. We talked a little bit about some things you can do as a law student while you're in law school. What if you have just graduated and maybe you didn't necessarily focus on this, but you decided this is a practice area you want to pursue? Or what if you're already an associate somewhere and you want to make a career change? Anything you would recommend to someone who's at the beginning of their law practice?
I'll go first, Renee, and I think that what's important is to set your goal and to stick to it. So if you want to go, you want to be in international law, you want to practice international law, keep that in mind. But also, obviously, there's a practical element. You need to go work, right? So don't hesitate to take a job and start developing your skill set in the field, because as Renee's already mentioned, international law impacts all the fields of law. So be on the lookout if you're already an associate attorney or you're starting out your career on the ways in which your practice can intersect internationally, and then explore those opportunities. Now, stay abreast of international legal developments and try to work that into your career in that way. Use it as a platform, because it might not be obvious to say, I just want to become an international lawyer. It's actually figuring out how you can be engaged in international legal projects and how you can do that from your existing position.
And Renee?
I'd agree. Part of that is looking for opportunity, whether or not you're in the law firm and you're asking around to others if you can get involved with something that deals with a foreign law or an international opportunity. Look for your pro bono opportunities. Write something so that you can get your name out there in that area that you want to go into. And if there is an area of law, take a look somewhere within the ABA. You will find that topic. Within the section of international law, contact the committee co-chairs. Join the monthly calls, get involved, and you'll start getting exposed to more of those opportunities that you'll never hear about otherwise.
So I have kind of a two-part question about languages. We haven't really talked about that. The first part is, do you need to have another language besides English in order to practice in this space? And the flip side of that is, if you are multilingual, how can you parlay those skills into helping yourself break into career paths in international law? Renee?
So I have never had where I was required to speak a foreign language in order to have a job. I've had where in all of my jobs, there has been a moment in which I am using different languages in multiple capacities in a professional setting. And so it's given me a distinct advantage, and it's delighted folks. I think that making an effort to speak other languages is a wonderful thing, but it is not necessarily essential depending upon your area of international law. Ronce, you're dealing right now in a multilingual situation, so I think he's got some great insights on that one.
Yeah, I think having a multilingual background or a bilingual background is very useful, especially if you're going to work in a foreign setting where you need to have that skill set. But it's not a precursor to becoming an international lawyer. And I work all over the world, and it'd be impossible for me to know all those languages. But so I work with interpreters and other people when I'm working abroad. But it's definitely a distinct advantage if you're going to be working, say, in Latin America, if you can speak Spanish, right? And that's obvious that that's going to be a useful skill set. And working in the United Nations, if you want to work for the UN, having speaking another language in which is the official language of the United Nations is also obviously very useful as a pedigree.
And I'll just add one more plug to all the career advice that we've been sharing today, and that is for any law students or attorneys listening to join the International Legal Education Committee of the International Section of the ABA. They have quarterly meetings. They love, especially when students join and participate, so I encourage you to reach out and take advantage of all of the ABA resources that you can. Thank you both, Ronce and Renee. We're unfortunately out of time. And I'm going to turn it back over to Emily to finish us up today.
Thank you, Skip, and thanks, Ronce and Renee, for sharing your fascinating career paths into international law and for all your insight into helping everybody figure out their career options. And everyone, thank you for attending today's webinar. Attendees, please be sure to check out our website at ambar.org/careers for upcoming free career-related articles and webinars. Recordings of past programs are on the website now, and on your screen are a couple of our upcoming career advice series webinars. You can search for jobs on ambar.org/jobs. You can also connect with us on social media, and if you are not a member of the ABA, visit ambar.org/join. You can learn more about the ABA Legal Career Central Board on our About page. Before leaving, please complete our short survey. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great day.